Fear is shown in the oldest myths on record, and it's usually associated with the most powerful of effects. It was so important that, at its most profound, it could only be felt in the presence of the gods themselves. Its majesty was so complete that it could both guide our actions and beliefs and decide the fate of entire civilizations. So what was this like? And why were the gods so interested in fear? Let's find out more. In ancient Egyptian religions, those that date back 5,000 years or so, the gods held ultimate power, controlling the fortunes of humanity with impunity. Religious and mythological tales of our beginnings show fear as a sense of awe, a naive and childlike submission to any or all of the various almighty entities we've chosen to place ahead of ourselves. There's been around 2,000 of them at the last count. To feel fear was to experience the very presence of the gods themselves, a matter that commanded our inquisitive attention. Yet at some point, we must also have decided that this was not the only place fear showed itself. The creation myths of the Babylonian and Mesopotamian civilizations brought some beguiling answers to questions about the nature of the gods. These established a central and abiding place for fear in the developing complexities of the Neolithic Revolution. This was a time when farming skills were becoming commonplace, and people were banding together in larger communities to grow food and stay safe. The beliefs of the time associated fear not just with the wrath and retribution of the gods. It linked it to wider claims around ritual, control, and obedience. Creation myths abound in the historical record, but the earliest written versions of the Bible story are found in the book of Genesis, in the Hebrew Bible. This was likely composed sometime between 200 and 500 BCE. The relationship between God, Adam, and Eve is emblematic here, using the threat of divine rejection and vengeance to remind humanity of its own insignificance and vanity in the face of greater and more worthy powers. In ancient Mesopotamia, the gods were often depicted as fearsome, willing to bring about great destruction, but somehow as always susceptible to appeasement. In the right circumstances, of course. These broader meanings for fear were retained as the transition to written records became more commonplace across the ancient world. In ancient Greek mythology, for example, the gods were often depicted as fearsome beings wielding immense power and causing great and thoughtless harm to all lesser beings for no better reason than they willed it. Yet they were also prepared to tolerate the presence of humanity as grateful servants, even if this was sometimes subject to a period of probation or with the condition of ongoing compliance attached to it. In ancient China, the concept of the mandate of heaven held that the ruler was chosen by the gods and that his authority would ultimately be enforced by the finality of divine retribution. These beliefs may have been of value to the supporters of particular spiritual ideas, but they must also have been available to those with an interest in social order and obedience to hierarchy and authority. The Analects of Confucius is believed to have been written during the 5th century BCE. It emphasizes the pre-existing importance of moral behavior and social harmony, and even goes as far as to say that a fear of punishment and shame was necessary to maintain order and stability. As Confucius believed that the ruler should be the moral model for society, fear of his will, and it was usually a man, becomes a sensible and bona fide instrument of rule. The religions and philosophies of the African continent also developed a complex relationship with fear. Whilst ideas about fear express the presence of the divine and sense in avoiding its retribution, they became intertwined too with beliefs about the power of supernatural forces and the pursuit of order. This demonstrated a desire for harmony with the natural world. This broader purpose for fear, shown in very different social settings, was something distinct from that associated with control, regardless of whether or not the instruments of this were brutal or invisible. It talks instead about a determination to live a good life, and one that attempts to reach beyond the demands of the everyday. In some ancient cultures, fear was a means by which knowledge of the undiscovered world could be obtained. In ancient Meso-American societies, these actually date from 2000 BCE onwards, a respect for nature communicated something of the will and majesty of the gods, and not just a fear of their troubling and unpredictable power. In ancient Indian literature, fear of the consequences of one's actions was also used by those who controlled or watched. However, in the Bhagavad Gita, it is also shown enabling a form of contemplation and offering a means through which more moral behaviours could be pondered and then selected. The overall picture painted of fear by ancient peoples is therefore varied and complex. Fear had different meanings and purposes, not just the one we think it has today. Yes, it was a way to warn, frighten, control and compel. But there was more to it than that. It was also a heightened state of awareness, a call to arms, the herald of maturity and leadership, the bringer of courage, and a guide along a path to something better, or even ideal. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, think about offering a like or a share. Even subscribe, it's free. Is it good to be afraid? Is it more than a warning? Is it a time to fight or flee? And have we lost these ideas today too easily as we internalize our feelings or hide them from others? Let me know what you think. In the meantime, regardless of what we believe fear means, remember that it's been many things, and that perhaps the only thing we really need to fear today is ignorance.